All right. Hey, how's everybody doing? I hope you're all staying healthy and safe. We're going to do a little something a little different today. As you probably have noted, there's been some changes in the school schedule. And so I posted an announcement about this. We were scheduled to have a midterm next week, but that's been changed given our change in schedule. And so I want to go over an updated syllabus. I'm also going to go over the quiz that most of you took, and then talk a little bit about the census, and then we'll talk about the midterm, which we will have a review session on next week on Thursday, because we don't have class Tuesday. Um, and I'll talk a little bit about that, how that might go. But I'm thinking of having being like a Zoom conference call where we can have like a live chat slash discussion for those of you that can attend and are interested in attending. It won't be mandatory. But we'll talk about that stuff today. So I'm not going to give like the traditional lecture. We're not going to get into chapter 4, I decided, until after the midterm. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. And I apologize if you hear yelling on the street. There's some activity out there, but I'm sure you can hear me just fine. So the first thing I want to do is go over our updated syllabus. So I'm just going to go to one of the sections here. So I posted an announcement about this. There was a recent announcement regarding a number of items, including the midterm assignment 2, which was due this week, and quiz number 2, which was due also this week. So the updated syllabus you'll find here in course materials. So there's our final updated syllabus. Hopefully it is the final updated syllabus. I know that these changes and updates to our class schedule are probably confusing to some of you. It's also been a little, difficult for me. It seems like once we got ramped up to go online, we keep getting emails about different changes, and so it's somewhat frustrating from the faculty perspective as well. But it's just something we kind of have to deal with. We definitely want everybody to have computers and make sure people have access to things like that. But also, we want to keep some continuity with our class as well. So the first thing, so first off, the updated syllabus, the final, hopefully updated syllabus, is located on Blackboard in course information and syllabus. You can find it here. This is for my earlier section, but the later section can find their syllabus in the same location. And really the only changes, the changes are in highlights. Next Tuesday, we don't have class. It's considered a recalibration period starting Friday, tomorrow, up until next Wednesday. On Thursday, we're going to have a midterm review, and I'll announce some more information about that, but I'm thinking we'll do like a live Zoom conference call for those of you that are available. For those that are not, you can send me, or uninterested, you don't have to participate. But in the meantime, you can always post questions on the discussion board. I'll put a midterm review question sheet there. And I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. But we can also discuss midterm review questions that people post on the board during the midterm review. So that's what we're going to do next Thursday. Then the following Tuesday, April 7th, is our midterm exam, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. After that, we have our spring recess, which the spring recess was really shortened. So that's not what it once was. We had that big break before in classes, but we no longer have that. Then in week 12, 414, we're going to get into chapter 4, and we'll do chapter 4 during that week. That's also a time when I'm going to bring in all of the stuff we have going on with the coronavirus, and we're going to start to think about coronavirus from a policy analysis perspective and start applying some of the stuff from earlier chapters, but also stuff from chapter 4 to investigate the coronavirus and things that are currently going on with that. So that's what's going on here. So that's all I wanted to say about the syllabus. And the syllabus is available on Blackboard, and it's there. And again, you should keep track. Today, obviously, we're not doing chapter 4, but we're going to do chapter 4 in week 12 and follow on the track provided moving forward. I'm also going to post assignment 3 sometime during the spring recess, but I might do so on week 12 because assignment 3 is going to relate to thinking about coronavirus from a policy analysis perspective. And again, it's not going to be an intense, super rigorous assignment. It'll be similar to the assignments we've had before, but I'm going to try to make it practical for the online environment. And so keep an eye out for that, but I'll post an announcement. All right, so that's our updated syllabus. That's a paper that I'm reading. So what I want to do now is shift over to, again, just kind of a brief lecture, not even a traditional lecture. But so what I want to talk about first is the quiz. All right, so I posted quiz number 2, and that was due at the end of Wednesday. And, 90% of you took the quiz, and that's good. Again, I'll be posting announcements about these things on Blackboard, and you should be checking your email, if not getting direct notifications when things are added to Blackboard. You want to look at that setting on Blackboard to make sure that you are getting updates. You can even download a Blackboard app and log in, and it'll send you updates to your phone when things have been added, and I highly recommend doing that. I have that on my phone, and it allows us to stay tapped into the class. So the quiz was due at the end of Wednesday, and it was based on the reading for Tuesday's lecture, and then also a reading about the coronavirus policy rolled out by Cuomo, the governor of the state of New York. So it posed the question of, what type of policy instrument or policy tool was Cuomo using? This shelter-in-place order, what type of tool was that, or is that? And the correct answer is regulation. It's this command and control rule that dictates to people living in the state of New York to essentially stay indoors unless you're going out to pick up essential household supplies, conduct essential household business like doing laundry, buying food items, and only to leave also for work if you're an essential worker. And that applies to businesses as well. And so the penalty is presumably if you're out, and I also didn't mention you're allowed to get exercise, but you're expected to stay at least 6 feet apart from everybody or individuals also outside. This law has teeth to it, such that if you're a business and you're considered non-essential and you stay open, and you have people congregating inside, or even if you are an essential business, let's say a restaurant, and you have people coming into your restaurant and sitting down to eat, that if you're a non-essential business and you stay open, or you're an essential business and you're not following the rules set out for that business, that it is punishable by fine. And perhaps even in a worst case scenario by having your doors closed, perhaps permanently having your business license revoked. And there have been instances of this happening. I've heard anecdotally, a friend of mine in Brooklyn heard of a restaurant that was allowing people to sit down and drink, and that they were fined $2,000. And so, something like a fine, $2,000 fine, gets the message across, can have a significant effect to a small business. Certainly having a business license revoked would have a significant impact. I haven't heard about anybody getting tickets for being on the street. I usually go out a couple times a day to get some activity, exercise outside. I keep a safe distance from people, and I haven't been stopped or haven't seen anybody getting stopped or anything like that. I have heard a police car goes through my neighborhood a couple times a day and plays a loudspeaker telling people to stay 6 feet apart due to the coronavirus. But so the point is that regulation is often identified through setting, commanding something to happen and enforcing it, controlling the public or whoever you're regulating to make sure that they comply. And this is often done through fines or fees for failure to comply as a common indicator that this is a regulation, right? I don't believe anybody said taxing and spending. Some said market mechanisms. I saw a number of answers that this is government management. And again, government management is when the government essentially provides oftentimes an essential service or a service for the population, a city generally speaking, or a state level. One of these is like, we think of like waste management, where again, if waste management was purely private, where every individual paid to have their garbage cleaned up individually, that you would have an accumulation of garbage in some neighborhoods where maybe individuals weren't able to prioritize their spending towards waste management. My cats are running around here in the background. But that government management typically is talking about when the government operates a certain service and kind of takes control of that service and provides it, right? We're not seeing that in this case, right? Even with testing, we're not necessarily seeing that, where many public hospitals, right, are providing testing facilities for coronavirus. But what we've also seen, because testing capacity has been a significant limitation to understanding the breadth of the coronavirus spread, that in New York, Governor Cuomo has been applauded as being kind of an innovator on this, and others have followed suit. And that Cuomo was very quick to start contracting or with private businesses to provide testing. And so even in the coronavirus testing situation, where, you know, testing for illness is typically a government managed process, we see contracts with private entities to allow, really in this case, to expand the scale of testing, and to allow us to better understand the scale of the coronavirus spread in the state of New York. That even testing is not necessarily, in this case, a pure form of government management, where you have this public-private partnership occurring. The last one, education, information, persuasion, certainly has some relevance here, but it would, education, information, and persuasion would purely be if the solution to the coronavirus problem from Governor Cuomo was to just provide, you know, infomercials, information, stay 6 feet, which we are getting a lot of, right? Particularly from the federal government. The Centers for Disease Control is providing a lot of infographics and information out there about how to stay safe, to wash your hands on a regular basis, to keep distance from people. That's education, information, persuasion. And that's largely what the federal government has been doing to mitigate the spread of coronavirus at this point, directly with, in terms of direct regulation with the public, or direct interaction with the public through policy. From the federal level has largely been education, information, and persuasion. The regulation is coming primarily from states and cities, and this is seen through these shelter-in-place oriented policies. That again, a common indicator of regulation is that if you don't do it, you're going to get a fine. You know, if it was taxing, it would be something like every time you go outside, you have to pay a fee, right? Which is difficult, to enforce, and probably not practical in this case. And so again, government management may apply if we're talking about testing, but this is not the policy approach to mitigation. You know, this is a policy approach to provide a better understanding of the problem. We need testing to understand the scale and the magnitude of the spread. Education, information, persuasion is being applied at all levels of government, arguably, but particularly at the federal level, where we don't have a specific policy to mitigate coronavirus in the form of regulation from the federal government. It's largely relied upon information education to persuade people to, you know, lessen the chance of getting coronavirus and therefore spreading it, right? And so the correct answer for quiz 2 was regulation. The second thing I want to talk about is the census. So given that we're all kind of confined, now is a really good time, and we're really not sure how well the census is going to run this year. So if you're not familiar, and we talked about this in class, but the census is this event that occurs every 10 years, and it's mandated by the US Constitution. And I'll put a YouTube video link out to you so you all can watch a quick clip about the census. But it's been going on since the late 18th century. Again, it's written into the Constitution that we need to conduct a census every 10 years. And this is one of those 10-year, the 2020 is one of those years. And so it begins in April 1st, although you're already able to participate online. And this, as I understand, is the first time that you're able to participate online. If you think back in 2010, maybe we could have done that, but I don't believe we did. And so this is actually the first time that you can do, again, to my understanding, the census online. And so it's a fitting, ironic that we are pretty much confined inside. So you can take the census, and I'm going to really encourage you to do that. So first of all, the census is this thing where it's basically a population count. It's designed to understand who lives where, um, how old those people are, what race, ethnicity those people are, how many people live in a household. And it's really good for states to, again, just take a census, get an inventory, if you will, of the populations that are living within that state, within a city. And it's very important to get that information. For a number of reasons. So first of all, what I want to say is there have been concerns raised about the information, because I already took the census, and it asks you, your address. It even asks for your name and your phone number. And they may call you if they have questions about your entry, which the likelihood of that is relatively low. And then they ask, how many people live in your household? What is your age? What is your race, ethnicity? And really basic questions. And that's pretty much it. Age, race, ethnicity, number of people living in a household, and that's it. And so it's very quick census survey, and it's very confidential. So this is a federal run. This is run by the U.S. Census Bureau, which is a federal agency. They have tons of really great data for social scientists. So the census also helps people like me and other social scientists who are interested in where population or race, ethnicity, income might be relevant. The census provides a lot of that data, and it's very useful for research as well. So this is a federal agency. You don't have to worry about the confidentiality of your information. If you're undocumented, for example, it's not going to ask you about that. And even if it did, this is very confidential information. So you don't have to worry about someone to come knocking on your door. For example, if you're worried about law enforcement coming, getting that information from the census and coming to find you, you really don't have to worry about that. It's very, very, very confidential. So I'm really going to encourage you all to take it for a number of reasons. One, it determines how the federal government will distribute literally billions of dollars through various block grants, categorical grants. The federal government provides money to states and also thereby default to cities to help conduct essential services that the government provides. I keep saying essential because I keep hearing that word in the last week. But the money is really important for federal programs that serve populations living in states and cities. And so population is a big determinant of the distribution of a lot of this federal money. And so it's really important for states and cities, for that matter, to understand how many people are living within their political boundaries. Also, perhaps what race and ethnicity, because some of these grants distribute money in those ways. And so it's really important determiner for how much money states are going to get of that federal pot. It's not the only determinant, but it is an important determinant. And so it's important that we participate in that process to help the state of New York and even the city of New York get its fair share of that federal money. Again, it's not the only determinant for how money is distributed, but it is an important one, population. Another one is that just at the lower, local level, it can really influence how community development occurs. So if you're doing a survey, the census, and they find, in this area, there's a lot of young individuals. Maybe we talk about building more schools. Maybe we talk about if you find, more people middle age to early adult age. Maybe we focus commercial development in these areas. And so, understanding the demographics, the age distribution at the really local scale. I'm talking like census tract, which is a form of geographic metric. Census tracts are very small. And so when you participate in the census, it contributes to the information that your census tract has. And so these census tracts are on the scale of like neighborhoods, right? And so within a number of tracts, you might look at the population. It helps city policymakers and even state level policymakers maybe determine where different types of development ought to occur. And so the census is very useful in this way. The last way, and this is not an exhaustive list, but the last way that the census is really important is that it influences the number of seats that each state is apportioned or allocated within the House of Representatives. So we talked about the House of Representatives as one of the chambers of the US Congress, and that the House of Representatives has about 435 members, okay? And so how, whereas each state, okay, and this might be on the midterm, but each state has 2 senators, right? So we have 50 states, so there's 100 senators. In the House of Representatives, we have 435 representatives, and the number of representatives that each state gets is a function of the portion of the US population that that state holds, okay? So what that means is if your state has a big portion of the US population, for example, New York, California, these states have a lot of people relative to other states in the country. Okay, so they hold significant portions of the US population. So they have more representatives. Every state at a minimum gets 1 representative. But as your population increases in size and proportion to other states within the US, you're allocated more of those 435 representatives, okay? So in this sense, this is again, when we do the census, it's required that reapportionment occurs where the number of Senate seats that each state holds can change based on changes in the population. And this goes back to the 14th Amendment of the US Constitution when we talk about equal representation. The idea is that, you know, while the Senate allows each state equal representation, every state has 2, so each state is equally represented on the Senate. The House is really a closer level form of democracy where representation in the House is a function of how many people your state has. So, you know, if you were a really populated state like New York or California, but you only had like 3 representatives, whereas a less populated state like North Dakota had 10, right? That wouldn't necessarily make sense because now North Dakota has more votes in the House of Representatives, but represents a smaller portion of the US population relative to California. And so the House of Representatives, as opposed to the Senate, is really designed to provide each state, to give states representation based on the portion of the US population that they account for. And so in that sense, you know, the more states, the more people a state has, the more seats it gets, the more representation it gets in the House, which arguably makes sense in terms of, you know, as a good kind of counterbalance to the equal representation under the Senate. All right. So just to give you an idea of what I mean, if we go on back and look at, I'm just going to move the little window here. But if we go back and look at the House of Representatives, don't look at that. If we go back and look at the House of Representatives, I don't know why I keep doing that. I'm not going to fiddle with that little window here. But if we go back and look at the apportionment of the House of Representatives from 2000 to 2010, okay, so this is the two censuses ago. Is it censi? I don't know. But in 2000, there was a reapportionment that occurred because we had a census, okay? So from 2000 to 2010, those 435 seats were distributed across the states in this way. So for example, if you look at New York had 29 seats, and that was a decrease. So the colors represent whether a state is gaining seats or losing seats. Okay, so this particular map shows that New York is the darker green. It says that the state lost 2 seats in the House, which means from 1990 to 2000, New York had 31 representatives, all right? After the 2000 census, the population or the portion of New York's population dropped, okay? So population left, other states had and moved to other states, all right? So people went from New York to some other state, and the total portion of the US population that New York accounts for decreased. So they lost 2 seats. California, if you look on the left here, gained 1 seat. So they became 53, whereas from 1990 to 2000, they only had 52 seats, all right? A number of states had no change, all right? So you can see, for example, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota in the top there, each had the minimum 1 seat in the House of Representatives. Now, these are very low populated states relative to, say, for example, New York, Texas, California, Florida, okay? But the most populated states, California, Texas, New York, you can see this here reflected in the number of representatives that they have. if we go look at the changes after the 2000, so in 2000 there was a census. This is the number of seats that were established for each state in the House of Representatives from 2000 to 2010. This is called reapportionment. When you have those changes, that's a reapportionment of those 435 seats in the House of Representatives, and they change based on census data. Okay. Now, if we go fast forward to 2010 to 2020 to the current time, again, there was a census in 2010. Reapportionment of the House of Representatives occurred, and it shows again, like New York, if you go back to the previous slide, had 29. New York had 29 from 2000 to 2010. It had lost 2 seats during the 2000 census. In 2010, New York lost an additional 2 seats down to 27, okay? What that means is that the portion of the US population that New York accounts for is declining consistently. While others, such as Florida, for example, are gaining. If we go back, you can see that in the 2000 census, Florida gained 2 seats. Texas also gained 2 seats. The portion of the US population that those states account for is growing, whereas New York's is declining, all right? If we fast forward again, you can see that Texas and Florida continue to grow. There's a lot of things that cause these people to move from one place to another. Some is cost of living, all right, which is a big issue in New York City, where most of New York State's population is located. Other things like economic opportunity related to cost of living, but jobs, weather, age, such as Florida, retirement age, baby boomers are retiring, right? During this time period, 2010 to 2020, and even earlier, and they're starting to move to warmer climates, which also explain gains in places like Arizona, where it tends to be a warmer climate. People in generally elderly populations tend to like warmer climates. There are also lower cost of living. And so these are places that portion of the US population is expanding. And so it'll be interesting to see, going from 2020 to 2030, how reapportionment occurs. Who's gaining seats and who's losing seats, and therefore who is gaining greater representation in the House of Representatives. And so this is also why it's important to participate in the census, so that federal level policymakers can get data. One, in terms of determining how to distribute federal money. 2, in terms of figuring out how to reapportion House seats. And so, again, not everybody's going to participate in the census. I mean, at the national scale, many people don't participate in the census. And there is some extrapolation that occurs. But the more data that we can provide through the census, the better for arguably the state of New York, money coming into communities for that matter, but also thinking about community development, and then state level representation in federal level government through the House of Representatives. And so I really want to encourage you to take the census this week and participate in that. And again, it's very confidential. You don't have to worry about your information getting out there. If you're undocumented, you don't have to be concerned. Also, encourage your family members to take it, right? Encourage your mom and dad or whoever you may be living with. Encourage them to take it. Encourage other family members in the city, brothers, sisters, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. Encourage them to take it. And again, it's an important part of the federal money, local development, and also representation at the federal level in the U.S. Congress. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about is the midterm. So, oops, there's a typo. Let me fix that so nobody freaks out. The midterm exam is April 7th, okay, which is essentially a week and a half or so from today, a week from next Tuesday, all right? Next Thursday, so next Tuesday we do not have class. That Thursday we'll do a midterm review. I'll field questions for people. And then the following, wow, I'm really screwing up here. The following, wait, yeah, it's Thursday, right? Hold on, let me just check my schedule. Sorry, give me a break here. The following Tuesday. Oh yeah, because we have spring break on that. Let me just go back to the syllabus. Wait. The syllabus. Okay. Yes, the midterm exam is on Tuesday the 7th. I just want to make sure there's a typo there. Okay. Tuesday the 7th is our midterm exam. Okay. So you want to be ready for that. There is down here, I say there's a study guide that's currently available on Blackboard in a folder in course materials that the folder is called midterm exam. If you go to that folder, you'll find the study guide. It's not super informational, but it covers all the important stuff, the basic stuff that I want you to be familiar with for the exam. Now, the exam is going to be posted on Blackboard. So again, Tuesday, April 7th. This is almost 2 weeks away. You're getting a lot of notice. I'm going to post a lot of announcements about this. But the exam will be on Blackboard, and it will be located in tests and quizzes where you took your quiz on Wednesday. The exam itself is going to be a series of multiple choice questions, perhaps 30 to 40 questions. I'm still not complete with this, but around that frame, certainly no less than 30, no more, not a lot more than 40 if it's more than 40. You will have all day to do this exam. So it's obviously open book, open note. It's not going to take you all day to do it, but I want to give everybody plenty of time to do it. So you're going to have all day. I'm going to open the exam on Tuesday at 8 a.m. It's going to close at 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday. Okay. So you're going to have all day to do it. So you need to allocate. It's going to take at least a couple hours, but you'll have all day. Okay. You can close it if you want. You can only submit it once. Okay. So when you open it, you don't have to necessarily complete it right away. But you can only submit it formally once, okay? I'll let everybody know how many questions there are so that you can be sure that you've answered every question and feel comfortable that you didn't submit it prematurely. But it's gonna be open all day, a series of multiple choice questions. It's gonna be very straightforward. You're gonna have your notes, you're gonna have lecture slides, you're gonna have our online lectures, and hopefully you have access to a text. So it should be totally doable in the time frame that you're given. But you do need to make sure you have at least a couple hours set aside on this day to do the exam, okay? And that's pretty much it. So if you have questions, you can shoot me an email. I'll send out information about the census. I definitely want to encourage you to do that. It's kind of cool to participate in something like that, and given that we're all locked away for the most part, you know, it's something to pass the time. It's relatively short, very quick and easy to do. So again, midterm exam, April 7th. No meeting on Tuesday this week, but we will have a review, a midterm exam review. I'll put a place on the discussion board to ask questions related to the midterm and the midterm review, and I'll address those questions in a Zoom video or live chat on Thursday of next week, a week from today. And then the following Tuesday is our midterm exam. You're gonna need at least a couple hours, maybe even less than that, but you should make sure you have a couple hours set aside so you don't feel rushed. But you are gonna have all day to do it if that's what you wanna do with your whole day and you have the time. But you definitely wanna make sure you have at least a couple hours allocated on that day, okay? So hopefully there's no more changes to our syllabus moving forward. And again, I hope everybody's doing relatively well. And let me know if any questions come up, concerns about resources, access to things, and there's a couple discussion threads on the discussion board. You can ask your colleagues about things like online learning, issues with coronavirus, you know, anything related to the coronavirus, access to services, internet challenges. You know, this is something, again, a lot of us are isolated. I'm sure many of you have people you're living with, but, you know, I want you to stay connected with the college and have somewhat of a collegial experience. And the discussion board is a good place to do that. So, all right, if I don't hear anything from you, I'll check you out next Thursday. We'll go over the midterm exam. I'll post some announcements reminding everybody about the midterm exam. We'll review it on Thursday, and then we'll get that exam knocked out the following Tuesday, and then we'll keep moving with the class. All right. We'll see you all soon.